All right, so part two is going to be a term that Betadorf developers have actually coined themselves in their surveys, which is the elitist stigma. As far as the Betadorf point of view, I'm pretty sure they've wanted to avoid it in basically any possible sense. But I wanted to open up the discussion because we were mentioning in the previous part, go check that out if you haven't already. We were mentioning that they really need to partition and segment their data in order to really interpret it in the best way possible. And one of the, I think, main important parts of that would be to separate games between higher ranks, which honestly I would say is Grandmaster and Contender, and lower ranks, which could arguably be anything below that, but like if you wanted to make like a real separation, you could do like high Grandmaster Contender, mid-level Diamond and Master, and everything below that is low rank. I just really feel like it would be a good way to segment data and realize like when a card is a problem only in higher ranks, only in lower ranks, and really have that as an extra variable that you consider when you want to either balance current cards or put new ones into the game. And I'll open up the floor to you guys if you want to add anything to that.
Well, first of all, could we define what exactly they mean by elitist stigma?
I mean, I'm assuming it would go into, um, like I feel like they would phrase it more towards discrimination. Like yeah, like don't hate too hard on lower players. I'll admit I do that a little bit too much, but yeah, the main thing being like the whole aversion that they have about this elitist stigma is like players like looking down on lower ranked players. Um,
I I believe even before the survey, the first time this was talked about was when Beta Dwarf first made the first change on wild cards. Before the deck was always 10 cards, and you could have wild cards. Now you have 10 unique cards, and you can wild card two.
two
And
extra
this was
cards.
their solution. Yeah, and right now, right now, no, at that time, they mentioned that separating the queues would probably mean you'd have players only using the wildcard queues,
Mm-hmm.
and some players that were only going to use the non-wildcard versions, and you would have this elitist stigma on these players that don't use wildcards, judging and discriminating upon those players that have just play with wild cards, and it's like, oh, what? Yeah, you're rank number one, but in the leaderboard of wild cards, who cares? With wild cards, everyone can do it. So like this type of
Mm-hmm.
discrimination could happen if you separate it into wild cards and non-wild cards. And Bad Dwarf was
Which
very clear at the time
was
how they wanted to avoid that at all. Like the game is supposed to bring people together, is supposed to bring the community together. It's not supposed to divide, to separate us. And in that sense, it's why I feel that separating the game styles like was never an option they took much liking to. Of
mm-hmm.
course, we can also consider other aspects like the number of players that play the game, and if you separated
Yes, I was going to
yeah,
add
if you
that.
separated, you would have even higher, longer queue times, which is also something people complain a lot, especially at
Mm-hmm.
higher ranks. So there's also all those factors to take into account. Yes, but above all, it's just of not dividing people. I think that's the key point, and where the elitist stigma come into key.
Yeah, that was the
Yes.
part they were mainly wanting to avoid. But yeah, right now, the as you said, Fogo, about the numbers. With the current player base, we'll look into that more in depth later. But it's definitely unsustainable to separate queues into wildcards, which was like the number one thing that people were suggesting at the time to deal with wildcards. Like only a specific kind of person likes to play wildcards, so put them somewhere else. where, quote unquote, I don't have to deal with them, which was the simple solution that people wanted at the time. And yeah, just Minion Masters and its current player base, like, it really wouldn't work out, especially in like 2v2 queues where a large amount of the player base is, but it would also be segmented a lot longer, a lot more, and really just not provide a good game experience overall. But I will go back to that point a little bit, that like, you don't have to do it as far as the the social aspects of the game. Like, you don't really need to go into that part, but as far as like data analysis and aggregation, I really feel like it would contribute a lot to making better game balance decisions moving forward. And there are games that definitely do this, like fighting games will do this a lot, but the prime example I see that where it happens a lot is League of Legends. League of Legends has a gigantic elo system, where people get stuck in their rank for weeks or months. Obviously their seasons are way longer, but the main thing that you see is that sometimes you'll just read the patch notes and you'll see this character was underperforming in lower elos, so instead of just buffing like straight up stats, like more damage or something like that, they would do something that would like simplify the mechanics of it. So I don't know, this ability has a bigger hitbox, so now it's easier to land in these common situations, things like that. Like, it really feels like it would be in the benefit of game balance overall to be able to have that separate data categorization, to be able to analyze cards in a different light sometimes, and be able to balance in ways that are better than just more damage, more range, less range, more mana, less mana. Hey, because some cards
they already do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps they already do split their analysis, but they've never made a point of that in their patch note, as far as I know.
Yeah, they never really seem to explain that part of it in their patch notes. I just do really feel like it would contribute a lot to diversifying that, especially with cheaper cards. Like, cheaper cards are very hard to balance because of that. Because, changing 10 damage, changing 1 mana on a card that costs 2 or 3, like, that's catastrophic. Like, you're giving it like 50% more mana cost, like 40% more damage, things like that. But if you can tweak them in like more creative ways, like hitboxes or slight attack speed things, like more nuanced changes would be able to make like balancing cheaper cards a lot easier. Whereas bigger cards, you can still like take 200 health off of it and suddenly it's fine.
I think overall it would be good for us to have some more insights on that data. You were mentioning League of Legends before, but I think two very aspects to consider here is that one, lots of changes happen related to competitions that League of Legends has. Like, they have high tier competitions, and based on those competitions, champions that are overperforming are somewhat tweaked, and champions that are underperforming when they shouldn't are also buffed. And here we don't have any separation at all. It feels like it's much more about how frequent cards are played, and then they need to get buffed or nerfed. And sometimes you have cards that are very played at like until platinum, diamond, and then starting from master and grandmaster and contender, they stop being used so often. And we have some very good examples for until some months ago, people could play Gex more on lower ranks, and sometimes people would not understand what it was doing, so they would just play it. But on higher ranks, people would, especially with the spells as they were, people could easily shut down Gex, so no one would play it. And Reboomer are similar. Like Reboomer will do a lot, and when people don't know how to stop it, it just gives you huge value. But then you go to some higher ranks and you don't see it so often. Why? Because people know how to deal with it. People learn how to deal with that, so they climb higher. And it's a type of parallelism like that you cannot do with League of Legends in that sense because lots of things that happen in League of Legends. First, you have much more data, and and second, like you have this consideration about ranks, which we don't know if it's taken into account, and sometimes it really feels like it's not taken into account. So that's why I think just having those insights on that data and on like more specific details on why cards are being changed. Like sometimes like the patch notes clearly mention, yes, we see this card has been underperforming, or we see no one is playing this card. Like who's no one? Data, number, percentage. Yes, maybe probably most people don't want to see that. To be fair, and that's completely like very fair and very straightforward. Probably most players don't want to know. Like we noticed only 6% of our average players, active players, use this card. So yeah, no, this card is underperforming. We are buffing it. Straightforward. But still, I think it
Yeah,
would be
like
fine to have
we were
a place where like more information is displayed.
Yeah, like we were mentioning about aggro ranges and weight classes and things like that. Like you don't have to like put it in like in the public eye per se, but make it readily available in some form. Like, like detailed patch notes if you want to. Like I don't think that would be too hard to do. It's not like you have to retype the whole thing. Just, add a little more information if somebody wants it.
I mean, one very good example, again, picking up on what you're saying, on League of Legends, anyone that's interested can see the win rates of any champion on the different ranks, how like the average gold that someone has on different ranks. Like all these stats are available, and you can see and you can learn based on that. You can see like, oh, like, imagine what it would be like if you could see like, oh, people at contender or at grandmaster level are playing this card a lot, and I don't see it at all. Let me try to play it. Let me try to see what I can do with this card. And then maybe you don't succeed and you're like, this card is trash. I don't understand why they play it. And maybe you're like, oh, I see why they do that.
Or
It would be nice to
you go
have
into
that.
somebody's stream and you ask. Like I really feel like I wish more people did that and just looked at somebody's deck list and asked why. Why do you do this? Why do you like this card? When do you use it? Like I feel like that part of the discussion, it feels like it gets lost a lot of the time, and it's more about, oh man, this card is so busted, I hate it, get it out of here. And like I feel like we could have those discussions more often. And honestly, like it's no secret that I've tended to be like very critical of this new generation of streamers because I feel like like some quality players have left, and not very many of them are really like stepping up to like fill that void. Like I feel like a lot of the like more like top level streamers have either stopped streaming or whatever circumstance they may find themselves in, they just sort of stopped. And like now a lot more of Minion Master streaming is like, hey guys, more community based, like, and I don't see why we can't have like a little bit more of both. Like, a lot of the newer streamers are more about, come for the gameplay, stay for my personality, and a lot less, come and stay for the gameplay. I don't know.
That's
Like it's
something I
just
wanted to bring up. In.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please do.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, this is something that I would like to bring up in another topic, not really the one that we have at hand right now.
Okay. And you can at least finish off the idea if you want to.
Yeah, I do agree that gameplay is really something that should motivate people to get better. As we were talking about the elitist stigma, etc., I don't really want. I don't look down on. I feel like the one thing we shouldn't look down on is new players. Of course, the thing we should encourage though is introspection and better play, and that would come from, as you say, streamers that do give input on people asking questions and wondering about card choices, card win rates, and utility, as you guys mentioned.
And that's as much a streamer responsibility as it is a community responsibility as a whole. Like there can be people willing to do that, but if no one cares and nobody asks, all that kind of gets
Yeah,
lost. So
we do need people to step up and
as as much as as much as this is a shout out to streamers, get a little bit into the nitty gritty of the game and learning and improving and all that, and community. Everybody that plays this game, don't be afraid to ask questions once in a while and really, go a level deeper. Net decking isn't really a common trend in this game because, like really your style and your preferences do weigh very heavily on the cards that you're going to use well, but you don't need to
Wait,
net
what do
deck.
you mean net? What do you mean net decking is not? What?
Net decking is copying somebody else's
Yeah,
list off the
what do
internet.
you mean that's not a thing?
It's a lot,
That,
like I feel
that's
like it's a
super a
lot
thing.
less common.
That's super a thing with decks exposed on leaderboard. I think that's exactly what shapes matches so heavenly, as we were discussing in the previous part. Like people see decks, people try the decks, they work, they use them. It's not mine. They change one or two cards. As you were saying, everyone has their style and those things they are more comfortable with. But you see a deck on leaderboard, you get the core and you just change it.
So you do see it more often. Interesting. I don't really have the. That's not really been my experience. That people tend to
I
net
think
deck a
that
lot. Like I had one friend probably last year that did that a lot. He would take probably all the top 10 deck lists, and you'd play pre-mains with the guy and he'd say, okay, I got this list from Cat, let's see how it works, and he'd do that. But I didn't really feel like it was a common trend. So you do feel like it's something that's getting more common these days?
Yeah, there's often that one deck, often during the start of a season, and then you'll see, well, not at the start, but during the halfway through a season, you would start seeing the same exact deck that's like the number one. People mention it in Diamond, and so people copy that deck and climb with it.
I think net decking happens aside from leaderboard. It just aside from leaderboard, it just happens much more on the groups that people have, or inside the guilds, inside the friends who are used to playing. Like, hey, do you have any cool deck you wanna play? Or guys, I just made this new deck. It's super awesome. You gotta try it out. Like, I've I feel like the small groups that's small in quantity of groups that exist. Like in those circles that happens. And I do still see there are lots of Discord channels where people do that a lot.
Okay,
But
yeah, that makes sense. So
like
social gamers tend to net deck a little bit more, is what you're
I
saying.
think that's yeah, it's that thing. If you don't make for it, you're not gonna be just playing the game and "Oh, you know what? Oh, look, I just got 3 messages of good decks to play." Like, no, in fact, we already see some people sharing decks in global. Some are awful, some are awesome, some are just weird. Like that's part of the game, right? Just people asking for comments and so on. Also on Discord, this happens a lot. I think
Yeah.
net decking is something very present in Minion Masters. Maybe even something more than lots of people would want to. So.
Yeah, Palm actually was one of the guys that actually shared one of those decks. He was the first 1v1 contender player this season. I can totally add that link in the description below. Make sure to remind me to do that. But yeah,
Yep.
he put out the list, he put out a guide. I'm pretty sure he even uploaded a playlist of matches on your way to contender, but yeah, people, yeah, I
That's
guess
what I
people
like
do
to
that.
encourage. Fogo earlier talked about the community and people playing together to have fun. In 2v2s and co-op, that's great. You want to share your time with a lot of people. You share ideas, you share decks. I want to give the other perspective of in 1v1s. I feel like people, it's extremely competitive. People hate the opponent. They hate all their plays. They laugh at them. It's not the best healthy
Guilty.
relationship between people, and that's not something to really encourage. And that's what we mentioned earlier about streamer. Uh, Especially in 1v1, streamers need to not have a negative, boastful approach to the opponent. They need to have introspection, respect each other. That is something that's the kind of thing that brings a community together, not being mad at each other, but rather encouraging each other.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I think
Yeah,
that's the key point
it
as
was one
something
of
we all
the
can do.
it was one of the reasons I started this whole concept of Delta Strike. Like, it is on hold for the time being because of mostly hardware restrictions, if I'm being honest. But I wanted to bring that sort of social gaming aspect to the world of 1v1. Like, the main reason I would, as far as my experience would be, that 1v1 players don't share because everybody's the enemy. Like, everybody's
Yep.
a potential opponent. So, especially when tournaments are coming, like, nobody's going to share anything because they're all holding that secret tech, hoping to get in on that money. And, that's where it ends up. The whole point of Delta Strike was having these 3 people teams where you could, like, share information. And, like, it didn't have to be, like, open to the public eye, but it did incentivize that whole process of, hey, let's, this is an idea I have. How could you work with it? How could I work with it? And just, giving that, like, 1v1 players, like, that opportunity to share their ideas a little bit more.
And I believe if we all do that, like if we try to share more with each other, if we try to play more together, that is a very good way to go against this elitist stigma. Like if we just try to accept what everyone is doing, if we just try to have fun all together and enjoy the play, enjoy the gameplay, like it will go much further from just being like, oh, you play that, oh, you play that. I think that is one thing where we can say the right direction is just about trying to enjoy our times together. For more than like sometimes we dislike what we are seeing or how the match is going. It's about at the end of the game being able to say GG. That was good.
Yeah, respect and discussion.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure that wraps it up. So, streamers, the challenge is, try to get those discussions going. If you feel like like you've got a specialty, be that a master, a deck type, a strategy, try to get conversations going about why you pick those cards, what you do, and to the community at large, don't be afraid to ask, be curious, ask questions. Like, more often than not, you'll actually get a pretty detailed answer, and that'll just make us grow as a whole. Hey guys, Red Shade here. I know that I haven't really been streaming lately at all, and I wanted to give you guys a little insight into that. Basically, long story short, my GPU actually went out. Yeah, one of its memory units just completely collapsed. It was giving me a lot of restart errors and, like, actually visible problems with my display. So I've had to go ahead and get a new one. For those of you who aren't really looking at the market right now, that does mean really hefty investment. Most of them are like double the price, if not more. So that's definitely something that I've been saving up for. The way to help me with that, though, there's actually plenty of ways here. If you guys go over to my link tree, I'll be sure to add the link below. You guys can find all sorts of useful links here. You can find direct access to that Twitch channel, social media, Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and also a very neat integration here straight to the merch store. As you see there, over 290 products, huge assortment. You guys can definitely take a look at that. Best bang for your buck way for you guys to support my content and get something some high quality merch in return. You know, it's not going to be just that straight up throwing money at me. You know, you're gonna get something pretty sweet back. And I'm always looking for new designs, new products, new things to add and offer you guys. And there's even the option to support directly if you guys were so inclined. But the big ones are definitely gonna be the Twitch integration and the merch store. So be sure to check that out. Definitely give it a look. I'll promise you it's worth your time. And that's probably going to be it for now. Stay awesome, guys, and I hope to see you next time.